In 1931, Albert Einstein wrote something in a private letter that his biographers have largely ignored. He described reading the Bhagavad Gita, an ancient Indian text written between the 5th and 2nd centuries BC, and finding in it concepts that he had spent decades trying to express in mathematical language. Not inspiration, not poetry, specific conceptual frameworks that he recognized from his own work in physics. Einstein was not a mystic. He was the most rigorous scientific mind of the 20th century, which makes what he wrote about the Bhagavad Gita more significant, not less. The Bhagavad Gita, translated as the Song of God, is a 700-verse Sanskrit text that forms part of the ancient Indian epic Mahabharata. It was written between approximately the 5th and 2nd centuries BC, though its oral transmission is believed to predate the written text significantly. The text takes the form of a dialogue between the warrior Arjuna and his charioteer Krishna, who reveals himself to be a manifestation of the divine, on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, moments before a great war. But what happens in that dialogue has nothing to do with war. It is a systematic exposition of the nature of reality, consciousness, time, and the self. The Gita describes reality as having two fundamental aspects: Purusha, pure consciousness, the unchanging observer; Prakriti, matter and energy, the changing observed. In the Gita's framework, what we call the self, the individual identity, is not located in the body or the mind. It is the consciousness that observes both. The soul is never born nor dies at any time. It has not come into being, does not come into being, and will not come into being. It is unborn, eternal, ever-existing, and primeval. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 20. This is not mythology. It is a philosophical argument about the nature of consciousness, made with logical precision, and it is an argument that Einstein encountered in his private reading and found, in his own words, remarkable. Albert Einstein was born in Ulm, Germany in 1879. By 1905, his Annus Mirabilis, miracle year, he had published 4 papers that would restructure the foundations of physics: the special theory of relativity, the photoelectric effect, Brownian motion, mass energy equivalence, E equals mc squared. He spent the next 3 decades working on the general theory of relativity and attempting, without success, to develop a unified field theory that would reconcile quantum mechanics with general relativity. The unified field theory was the central obsession of the last 30 years of his life. He never completed it, but in his private correspondence, particularly in a letter written in 1931 to a friend, Einstein described reading the Bhagavad Gita and finding in it a description of reality that resonated with what he had been trying to express mathematically. He wrote that when he read the Gita, he asked himself how it was possible that humanity had needed to wait for quantum physics to discover what ancient Indian philosophers had already described. The specific concept he referenced was the relationship between the observer and the observed. In the Gita, the fundamental distinction is between Purusha, pure consciousness, the unchanging observer, and Prakriti, matter and energy, what is observed. The two are not separate. They are two aspects of a single reality. In quantum mechanics, specifically in the Copenhagen interpretation, developed by Niels Bohr and Werner Heisenberg in 1927, the act of observation affects what is observed. A particle does not have a definite position or momentum until it is measured. The observer is not separate from the system being observed. The observer is part of it. The Bhagavad Gita had described this relationship between consciousness and matter, between observer and observed, approximately 2,300 years before the Copenhagen interpretation. Einstein was not claiming the ancient Indians had anticipated quantum mechanics. He was observing that they had been asking the same question and had arrived at a framework that pointed in the same direction. The Bhagavad Gita's description of reality contains several concepts that modern physicists have found, independently, to be philosophically relevant to contemporary physics. The first is the concept of Maya, often translated as illusion, but more precisely meaning the apparent solidity and permanence of the physical world. In the Gita's framework, the physical world as we perceive it is not false, but it is incomplete. What appears to be solid, permanent, and separately existing is actually a dynamic pattern of energy, constantly changing, never fixed. In 1905, Einstein demonstrated through special relativity that matter and energy are equivalent, that what appears to be solid matter is actually a highly concentrated form of energy, E equals mc squared. The apparent solidity of the physical world is a function of the scale at which we observe it. At the quantum scale, it dissolves into probability distributions. The Gita described the apparent solidity of the physical world as Maya, not false, but incomplete, 2,300 years before Einstein's equations demonstrated the same thing mathematically. The second concept is Brahman, the unified field from which all apparent multiplicity emerges. In the Gita, all of reality, all matter, all energy, all consciousness is an expression of a single underlying field. Individual things do not exist independently. They are temporary patterns in a unified substrate. Einstein spent the last 30 years of his life attempting to develop a unified field theory, a mathematical description of a single underlying field from which all the forces of nature emerge. He never succeeded. String theory, the most ambitious current attempt at a unified description of reality, is still attempting the same thing. The Bhagavad Gita described the unified field in the 3rd century BC. Physics has been attempting to formalize it mathematically ever since. The third concept is the nature of time. In the Gita, time is not linear, it is cyclical. And from the perspective of pure consciousness, it is simultaneously complete. Krishna tells Arjuna in chapter 11, "Time I am, the great destroyer of the worlds." In Einstein's general theory of relativity, published in 1915, time is not a fixed background against which events occur. It is a dimension of space-time, affected by gravity, by velocity, by the mass of nearby objects. What we experience as the sequential flow of time is a feature of the scale at which we observe reality. At the cosmological scale, past, present, and future exist simultaneously in the four-dimensional structure of space-time. The Gita's description of time as cyclical and simultaneously complete, from the perspective of the divine observer, maps onto the relativistic description of time with a precision that is difficult to dismiss as coincidence. Einstein was not the only physicist of the 20th century to find resonance between the Bhagavad Gita and modern physics. J. Robert Oppenheimer, the physicist who led the Manhattan Project and oversaw the development of the atomic bomb, had studied Sanskrit specifically to read the Bhagavad Gita in its original language. On July 16, 1945, the morning of the Trinity test, the first detonation of a nuclear weapon, Oppenheimer watched the explosion from the observation bunker. When asked later what he had thought in that moment, he quoted chapter 11 of the Bhagavad Gita, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." He was not being poetic. He had been reading the Gita for years. The specific verse he quoted, spoken by Krishna as he reveals his universal form to Arjuna, describes the nature of a force that operates beyond human control or comprehension. Oppenheimer recognized in the nuclear explosion something that the Gita had described 2,300 years earlier, a force that, once released, operated according to its own logic, independent of the intentions of whoever had released it. He spent the rest of his life arguing against the further development and use of nuclear weapons. He had understood what he had created. The Gita had given him the vocabulary to describe it. The relationship between the Bhagavad Gita and modern physics is not a New Age claim. It is documented in the private correspondence and public statements of some of the most rigorous scientific minds of the 20th century. Einstein referenced it in 1931. Oppenheimer quoted it in 1945. Physicist Erwin Schrödinger, whose wave equation is one of the foundational equations of quantum mechanics, wrote extensively about Vedantic philosophy in his book, What is Life?, published in 1944. He argued that the Vedantic concept of Atman, the individual self as an expression of universal consciousness, was philosophically consistent with what quantum mechanics suggested about the nature of the observer. Physicist Werner Heisenberg, who developed the uncertainty principle, wrote in his autobiography that his conversations with the Indian philosopher Rabindranath Tagore about Indian philosophy had helped him become more comfortable with the counterintuitive implications of quantum mechanics. These are not peripheral figures. They are the people who built the physics of the 20th century. And they all found independently that an ancient Indian text written 2,300 years ago had been asking the same questions they were asking, and had arrived at frameworks that their equations were beginning to formalize. The Bhagavad Gita was written between the 5th and 2nd centuries BC. It describes the relationship between consciousness and matter, the nature of time, the unified field from which all reality emerges, and the relationship between the observer and the observed. Einstein spent 30 years attempting to formalize the unified field mathematically. Oppenheimer quoted the Gita at the moment he watched the most destructive force in human history detonate. Schrödinger found in Vedantic philosophy a framework for understanding what quantum mechanics implied about consciousness. Heisenberg found in Indian philosophy the conceptual tools to accept what his own equations were telling him. None of them were mystics. All of them were the most rigorous scientific minds of their generation. And all of them arrived independently at the same uncomfortable observation, that a text written 2,300 years ago, in a language most of them had to learn specifically to read it, had already been there, asking the same questions, pointing in the same direction. The question is not whether the ancient Indians anticipated modern physics. The question is, what does it mean that the most fundamental questions physics is still trying to answer were already being asked 2,300 years ago? And what else is in that text that we haven't caught up to yet? If you'd like to support this work, you can do so by becoming a member. Support is never expected, but always deeply appreciated. Thank you for being here.